time here, raise your hand if this is your first time. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here, and we're going to do one more this spring, and then we'll take the summer off and be resuming another group of times in the fall. And what we're talking about is leadership and developing leadership in your offices or in your settings, wherever you work. And really, there are four types of leaders or ways to look at leadership. One is personal. You have to lead yourself. Another one is the one-on-one, leading just another person, you and another person. A third one is leading a team. And the fourth one is leading an organization. This is not just about leading organizations. If you lead no one but yourself, all of us lead ourselves. So every one of us have to learn to lead ourselves. We all have one-on-one interactions, whether it's in our office or in our place of work or with vendors or competitors or things like that. So you got to learn that one-on-one as well as the team and then the organization. We talked about all of that the first and second time and trying to pull it, but as you look and see the things I'm going to talk about today, just think in context. It could be just about yourself, could be about you and another person, and I appreciate, even today, some of you have brought your competitors here. There's some realtors, you know, real estate's a highly competitive group, and I asked somebody at a real estate table who's got a name of a realtor on their table, I said, are you all with his office? And only half were, and the others were from other offices. I appreciate it because you got to work with your competitors. I'm a firm believer of that. It's not dog eat dog and kill everybody but yourself. So that, and then of course your team, you may only be responsible for 3 people or 10 people or 20 people. You may be the head of your whole organization. So all of these principles we talk about over these weeks deal in all of those areas. So don't just think they're for one area versus another. And actually, I like to put it through a grid of personal first. Because if you can't do it with yourself, why are you trying to do it with somebody else? So let's move ahead and begin that. You have a sheet there if you'd like to fill it in. I have a lot of information today, and I'm not going to cover it all. There's more information under, especially the 5 points I'm going to talk about at the end. And if you'd like to go to BocaLead.com, there's a filled out version of this. So if you don't like to write, whatever, you can just go there and print out a PDF of the filled version with everything I'm about to say. And it's also on video. In a couple of days, it'll be up there as well. In the early and mid 1950s, there were 2 human feats that were never thought would ever be accomplished in this world. 2 human feats. The first one was the climbing of Mount Everest, and the second one was breaking the 4-minute mile. Never thought it would happen. And then we know that both of those occurred. Both of those occurred in the same fiscal year, from May 29, 1953, when Edmund Hillary and Norgay Tenzing, the Sherpa, scaled Mount Everest, and we're all familiar with the issues of Mount Everest now, but over 3,000 people have scaled it since. And there's hundreds a year. This year they may not, because they might not do it. They're boycotting, so we're not sure. I've been to Nepal almost every year over the last 10 years. I love Nepal. I love the Himalayas, but I've never climbed it. But it can be climbed. But what's interesting is the one that's coming up as the 60th anniversary is on May 6th, next week, is the breaking of the 4-minute mile. You may not know it. We know who broke it. Anybody know? Roger Bannister broke it. But you have to understand that he is not the one who solely broke the record. There was a battle between 4 guys, Roger Bannister, Chris Braswell, Chris Chataway, and a guy named John Landy. Interesting, you've never heard of the other 3, have you? Well, John Landy was from Australia. He and Roger Bannister were the best runners. And they knew one of them was going to break it because they kept going about 4 minutes, 2 seconds. If you can go 4 minutes, 2 seconds, you can go 3:59. So it's not about, it was a mental block. So the 3 guys, Chris, and Roger, were on the same team, the Oxford Amateur Athletic Team. Roger Bannister was a neurology student, becoming a doctor, an MD, and a neurologist. He was a runner as well. They all realized that the only way they were going to beat John Landy in Australia was the 3 of them do it together. Now, running a race, a mile race, is an individual sport, isn't it? Totally individual, except for coaching. Well, they did it as a team on the track. They picked 6 months out when they were going to do it. It was March 6th. It was going to be an intercollegiate race just outside of London. They picked the day, they picked the place, they decided that is the day we are going to break the 4-minute mile. But only we remember is one man, Roger Bannister. Here's how they did it. They chose, Chris Braswell was a great half-miler. 4 laps, right? The old 440, 4 laps around the track was the way they used to do it. 4 laps. They had to do each lap in a minute and 1 lap in 59 seconds. Braswell was going to pace the 3 of them and run the race as if it was a half-mile race. And he practiced and practiced and practiced, so he knew every time he crossed the finish line, the 4 times you got to cross it, that it was 60 seconds. And he was to do it twice. If he never finished the race, nobody cared. He did finish the race, but he finished in last place because he was pacing Chataway and Bannister. And then Chataway was going to run the race as a 3/4 mile race. So when they got to the half mile, his job was to run the 3rd quarter mile in 60 seconds, to the 10th of a second. Back then they didn't do hundredths of seconds. And they practiced this, and they knew that if Braswell did it in 120 seconds, and then the next guy, Chataway, did it in 60, that Roger could do it in 59. And they've been practicing and practicing. The day of the event, there was 25-mile-an-hour winds, there was rain, and Bannister had been up 3 straight nights studying for a medical exam. But they still chose to do it. And others got wind of it. So there were 3,000 people at this race. Now, you guys may have kids that used to race. People don't go to races like that, like they do now. Back then, 3,000 people were a lot. It was on the radio. The radio announcer was Harold Abramson. You remember Chariots of Fire? Eric Liddell and Harold Abramson. He was the best runner in England, 1924. This is now years later, but he's doing it. And the announcer at the arena where they were doing was a guy you've probably never heard of, but you've found out what he's done since. His name was Norris McWhirter. Norris McWhirter was so excited about this race, he said, people will love to learn about other races around the world, and he started the Guinness Book of World Records because of that day. And this is what happened. Braswell did 2 laps, 120 seconds down to the 10th. Chataway did his in 60 seconds down to the 10th. And then Roger Bannister broke away and did it in 59.4 seconds. 3:59.4. A week later, John Landy broke it. 2 weeks later after that, Braswell and Chataway broke it. We don't remember any of those, do we? Who was the second person to cross the Atlantic? We have no idea. We remember the first person, right? But he did it because he was empowered by his team. Even in the individual sport of running, it took a team that was empowered to do it. And today I want to talk about empowering, because you say, oh, I'm just an entrepreneur. You say, I'm just a one-man show. You say, or a one-woman show, or I don't need others to empower me. I'm running my race by myself. Let me tell you, you are not an island. You are not running your race by yourself, and you will go farther and faster if you empower the people around you. And so for the next few minutes, we're going to look at it. And I'm going to start with 4 things and end with 5. So it's a lot of writing, or don't write anything down. My goal is you walk out of here with 1 thing. I'm going to say 9 things. You just walk out with 1. If you walk out with 1, I'm happy. You'll learn something. We all move on. But let me give you, and the first category is, I'm going to answer the question, what are employees asking of their employers? 75,000 people were surveyed on this all across the world. 2 guys from Harvard did this study for over 10 years, and they came up with 4 major things that employees are looking from their employers, which people are looking from their leaders, their bosses, their supervisors. Can I give them to you? It's 4 things. It's very interesting. None of them have to do with money. None of them have to do with benefits. None of them have to even do with workplace security and some of those other things that we are now so interested in. But let me give you, number 1 thing, by far, the top thing, was that the boss, leader, supervisor, think of it yourself, was honest. Honesty was off the charts, the number 1 important thing that people underneath wanted of the people above. You can name, they cross-sectioned. This wasn't just bankers or accountants or whatever. It was across the board, 75,000. And interestingly enough, and I'm adding these statements, and by the way, at the bottom of your paper, there is the 2 books and some of the resources I am using on this talk, not the illustrations, but some of these facts. So if you want to fact check me, you can go to those books. But let me tell you, the Leadership Challenges, which is one of the best leadership books ever written, is 700 pages long. I'm going to give it to you in 25 minutes and some other things. So you decide which one you want to do. If you want to fact check me, it's a fabulous book, but it's literally this thick. But what does honesty lead to? It leads to trust. If you want trust in your organization, and I say that personally, one-on-one, team, or organization, honesty leads to trust. Dishonesty, you just decide what it leads to, a lot of other aberrant behavior. So honesty is huge. This is what they're saying. This is not what I'm saying or what leadership gurus are saying. That's what they're saying. Number 2, forward-looking. Now this is something that you would say, okay, that makes sense. Vision. We talked about vision last week, and I'm going to mention it in a few minutes. But forward vision or forward-looking does this to someone underneath you. Whether it is your children, as we talked about it, this even applies in families, or any other setting, it gives hope. And let me tell you, hope is huge. Because when people have lost hope, whether it's hope at any level, hope in the paycheck on Friday, hope in whatever, if you lose hope, you've lost a lot. And someone who is forward-looking, and I'm going to define some of these in better terms in a minute, and really can help people, can give people hope. And it is a wonderful thing. Number 3, inspiring. Now, I spent a whole session on being inspiring, but and I didn't make this up. This is amazing. And inspiration leads to compassion. It is interesting that inspiration, when you inspire people, the enthusiasm, the excitement, and I'm not just talking about being off the charts positive like Bill Hood is here, who came up here. I mean, he's positive on a bad day. It's raining, it's snowing, the hurricane's out. What a great day, he always says, right? And I'm like, Kirsten, how do you live with this guy? You know? Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, his mother's here. I shouldn't have said that. Oh, my goodness, sorry. I know where he got it from. These guys. Great thing. But here's, when you're inspiring, it does cause people to do different things. Now, I mentioned this in church the other day, and maybe you saw this, but they did the rudest cities in the world survey. Do you remember that? You like that? Remember? Now, there are, let's see, it was the English-speaking world, anyone who spoke English. Now, that would probably mean about 2 million cities, okay? 2 million cities. Top 20 cities, not 20%, 20 cities. Boca Raton is 12th. 12th rudest city out of 2 million towns, villages, cities, and metropolitan areas. We are 12th. Now, I met some New Yorkers here. We are ahead of New York. And believe it or not, we are ahead of North Jersey. I don't get it. They're all down here. They're all down here. Right. That's it. They're all here. But you can change people. You can change people. It is amazing. With rudeness comes lack of compassion. With rudeness comes, it's all about me. Why are people rude? There's a lot of reasons. Won't go there, but understand compassion. Number 4, and this is the one I would have thought would have been way up high. The 4th one is competence. They do want competence. Employees want to know that you know what you're talking about, that you can set some direction, that you can do things, and competence. And competence leads to stability. And in this world today, if you can provide some stability in your business, in your employees, in your setting, it goes a long way and it will grow, because we live in a very unstable, that's an understatement, unstable situation here. Now that's what the employees say. Now let's go to 5 ways you can empower your people. And remember, you are one of those people, so empowering yourself as well. Let's go through it. Number 1, and these, if you don't like the words I use, that's okay. Get the concepts and throw the words away. It's not about the words. Number 1 is model the way. Model. You are to model the way. What does that mean? A couple things. I mean, you could go a lot in this. Let me just give you 2 areas. Number 1, you have to clarify the values that are important to you. If you're going to be honest, because that might not be a value. You might say, I'm going to be dishonest. And that might be a value. Well, I don't think it's a good value, but it is a value. You've got to clarify your values with people. I remember one day I was asked a question by an employee that I assumed they would have known the answer. It was a black and white issue. I mean, it was clearly black and white. And they asked me the issue as if they didn't know what I thought about it. And I thought, wow. Because I presumed something. I never clarified it with them. Had to do with agreeing on contracts, and there's a lot of gray area, those of you who deal in contracts. That's why we have all these lawyers, because it's so gray, and they thought we could live in the gray, and I tended to be a little more black and white on my contracts, and they thought that it was okay to do these shady things, these grayish things. And I had never clarified it, because it was my value, personal, but I hadn't clarified it for the organization. You got to clarify your values, which means, in other words, you got to come up with your voice. What is your voice? That's just kind of a metaphor for saying, who are you and that's that consistency. You're modeling the way. You got to be consistent. You have to set the example. I am not into people who say do this, but do something else. That is hypocrisy at its height, and we see it at all levels, whether it's in nonprofit world or for-profit world. So that's number 1. Number 2, inspire a shared vision. Inspire a shared vision. This is very, very important, because you can envision the future. You as a leader got to see the future. I hope you know it. You got to look down the road and kind of, what are your goals? This is what a budget is. This is what goal setting is. You got to do it, but you got to empower people and have them come alongside of you. So we have a police officer here, Vinny. I just spent the morning with Vinny. Vinny's a friend, and we spent the morning together doing some things. And it was nice walking into the police station, not trying to chase somebody or one of our parishioners or whatever, and bailing them out. So we were there on good things, but we're there. Now, I can give a gun to somebody, and it empowers them. Well, when they give guns to police officers, it's to serve and protect. You see, the giving of the empowerment is under a clear vision to serve and to protect. I can empower somebody with a gun and just say, let's go to the mall with it. Let's go to Mayors with it. Let's go to Tiffany's with it. Let's go to the house down the street with it. They're empowered the same way, but with the wrong vision. You've got to have your vision clear, because as you empower people, they got to be empowered with the right vision. The vision of your organization, the vision of your team. See that? I mean, that's an easy one, but to understand, it's very important that it's not just about empowering people, it's empowering them to a clear vision. Number 3. Sorry about this clicking. I don't know what's going on. But number 3, challenge the process. Challenge the process. Now, this does not mean be a naysayer, be against the corporate culture, but you need to challenge the process. We live in a business environment that is changing every day. Now, I've been out of real estate day to day for 5 years. People ask me, well, tell me how to do this, or help me do that. I said, I'm out 5 years. If you're out 6 months, you're irrelevant in the real estate. If you're out in, how about medical? If somebody never did medical for 10 years and you went to that doctor, he or she would be totally irrelevant. Why? Because the processes have been changed, right? And you need to challenge it. It's interesting, I read a biography of the history of the Cleveland Clinic. You know the Cleveland Clinic? One of the top 3 healthcare organizations in America, the Mayo, MD Anderson, Cleveland Clinic, there's a couple others. These guys are just off the charts great. Well, Cleveland Clinic used to have a philosophy that had to deal with the lower GI. I mean, they were down here, they were the best in kidneys, livers, lower GI, colons, et cetera, and it's amazing. They were the best in the world, better than Mayo. MD Anderson hadn't quite come into play yet. They were the best, and yet they were losing business, and yes, medicine is business. They were losing business, and they couldn't figure out why. So the president, Toby Cosgrove, started going around to their clinics and started having town meetings. And he would just invite people from the community and say, do you come to Cleveland Clinic? And they were obviously the best in the community that they were in. And people would raise their hand and says, we do not come to you. Not because you're not the best, but because you don't care for people. You only care for organs. And he thought, we are the best with liver. You know, he lists all these things that I'm not a medical guy. And they realized they took none of the human condition of the medical process into play. Nowadays, if you go to the Cleveland Clinic, and many of you have, and your parents have or whatever, the human dimension is huge for them. They challenge the process. And now they are considered one of the best, again, there's 4 or 5 great ones, in terms of taking a person through the process of the issues. So it's not just about being the best medical person, being the best name your industry, but it's also the personal. I remember I've had 4 knee operations, and our family just keeps these orthopedics alive. It's just unbelievable. Being tall is great, but it has its faults. And everybody thinks it's hitting your head. It has nothing to do with your head. Tall people never hit their head because we're always looking. Short people hit their heads because they're never looking, but we have bad knees, bad shoulders. Okay, it's just like unbelievable, you know, so we just keep these doctors going. So my second knee operation on one of my knees, I said, I got to go to the best guy in Boca. So I went to the best guy in Boca. And you would know his name, so I'm not even going to say his name. He was the rudest, nastiest, oh, you've been there. And I looked at him, I said, you are the best orthopedic knee surgeon in Boca Raton. I know it and you know it. You have no manners, you don't care for me, you don't care anything, and I walked out. I'd rather go to the second best and know that that's me. Now you may say, I don't care what he thinks, bedside manner's not important, but let me tell you, you gotta understand the whole thing. You've got to challenge the process. Now, you look at your business model, you look at everything and say, where are we missing it? And why are they down the street doing better than we are here? And figure it out. You got to challenge it. Don't be afraid to challenge the process. I'm not talking about challenging the boss's boss. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about challenging it and saying, what are better ways we could do this? Americans are known for innovation. Let's innovate. We are known for initiate. Let's initiate. We are known for doing it. It is amazing. I travel all over the world, and when you come here, I always ask where people are from. People think, boy, that's rude, only because I've been to 85 countries, I travel all the time, I love the world, but you have to understand that there are certain countries around the world that initiate, develop, and there's other countries who follow those countries. We just happen to be one of those countries that initiate and develop and do that, and we're beginning to lose that. And I would just say, challenge that. Let's continue to be the best in the industries in which we do. And I think it would be great to do that and not just say the Pacific Rim is the best, or Sub-Asia is the best, or the Caribbean Basin is the best. I think we have opportunities to do that, but you got to take your people with you on that. So I encourage you to do that. Number 4. And this comes to empowering the right way. You need to enable others to act. Enable others to act. 2 things on this. This could go on for hours. I love this part, this enabling part. Now, I'm not talking about, we love to enable people to do negative behavior. right? The uncle who's the drunk that nobody talks about. We've enabled him in the family, and we don't, the elephant in the middle of the room kind of person. We enable them, and we're okay with that, but we don't enable others to do good actions in our organization. And I would just encourage you to do that. Foster collaboration, and for some of you, it means you got to go out of your organization to do it. I found that some of my best clients were my competitors. Why? Because they don't do everything. I did things they didn't do. And if I treated them well and fostered collaboration, they would empower me with their clients. Because I empowered them with honesty, integrity. I'll give them a fair deal. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting clients where they said, hey, Bill, I know you're not going to steal them when it comes to this part of the real estate transaction. Would you help me in that part of the real estate transaction? And it would be a different company. And I would say, you got people in your own company that do that. And they go, well, we don't quite trust them. See, it goes back to trust, right? And honesty. And let me tell you, you work well with your competitors. Most of my business came from my competitors. I loved my competitors to death. And realizing that it could be you bankers, you other people, you don't do everything. Allow your competitors to be fostering this collaboration. And then, of course, within your company, across divisions and departments and things like that. And the second part of that is strengthening others. You got to build into people. Ultimately, building into people. Whatever that looks like for you in your industry. I love I love reading about companies. So I read all these books about companies. I just finished the Ritz-Carlton book, the definitive book on the Ritz-Carlton. It's wonderful. The vision statement of Ritz-Carlton is this: ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Now, do you get that? Okay, the Ritz-Carlton clientele are somewhere up here. The workers are obviously better than minimum wage, but they're way down here, right? Probably 2 to 3 zeros less on their paycheck than their paycheck. But Ritz-Carlton says it's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Do you see the empowerment that gives? That we're not hierarchying our certain people over others. Now, certain people have different talents, abilities, amounts of money. Yes, you are going to treat your $1 million customer better than your $5 customer. I get that. But not as a human. You got to treat them and empower your people, because I've shared so many stories of how the service side of your business, the minimum wage side of your business, if they get it, everybody else gets it. I have a good friend. Is Don here? Don Cali, are you here? Don Cali and I are friends. Don Cali runs this whole operation. We have about 7 or 10 I don't even know how many buildings we have, hundreds of thousands of square feet. 3 guys run this whole physical plant. It's a miracle how it works. I have no idea. We have 105 bathrooms. I don't get how you do keep I have 3 at home. I can't do it. 105. Don would never stand up here. Okay, I stand up here. This is my gift. Don and I went to Haiti 2 years ago. Haiti runs on small machines. The whole country runs on small machines. No bigger than this. Don is a king at understanding small machinery. When we got down there, he was fixing a machine, and there were 40 guys who didn't speak English. It was like a theater, like a medical theater at a medical school, all looking at Don. And the empowerment that Don was able to do using his giftedness. I was over there sweeping the floor, literally, I was sweeping the floor, because that's the only thing I could do in a small shop, a small machine shop. That's all I knew how to do. I could separate the widgets of this size with the widgets of that size. Don was king. And they knew it. And he empowered those people with the gifts he had. You see, if we empower people, they empower other people. It is an incredible thing. Then finally, 5th. Boy, our time goes by fast. I'm committed to get you out of here at 1. And this is a great one. This is one I love. Encourage the heart. You do have a responsibility to encourage people. I'm a big fan of gratitude. Gratitude to me is like off the charts important. to be grateful. Every morning I exercise. A lot of you exercise, some of you walk, some of you run. For those of you who exercise outdoors, some of you do it in a gym, some of you do it in your garage. If you're outdoors, let me give you something. Little test. Say good morning to every person you pass. It is unbelievable. I've been doing this for years, but I do A1A, dozens. And I ride a bike, so I'm just saying hello, good morning to everybody. And it takes sometimes months for them to say good morning back. It's the same group. There's the 6 o'clock group, there's the 7 o'clock. We're all creatures of habit, right? So I'm the 6:30 to 7:30 group, and it's the same people out there, the same runners, the same bikers, the same everything, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday group, the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday group. I'm out every day, so I'm there, and I'm saying hello to every one of them. I want to show some gratitude that I live in a great city. I mean, that has nothing to do with business. I love this city. I love where we live. And I show gratitude even to people with their earphones on. I'm waving to them, I'm saying hello. But we need to do it more institutionally with the people we work with. And let me tell you, it's not just recognizing success. Absolutely. Your top performers, you recognize them. Your peers, you recognize them. But let me tell you, you recognize everybody in your organization because every one of them makes it successful. And I believe if you practice these 5 things, let me just repeat them again. Model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. It will go a long way for you personally in your one-on-one relationships, your teams, and then your organization. Let me share a story of a guy named Charles Plum. I don't think anybody here has probably heard of it. Anybody heard of Charles Plum? I haven't. He was a fighter pilot in Vietnam. He's a businessman now. He's in his 60s, towards retirement. He writes this: recently, I was sitting in a restaurant in Kansas City. A man about 2 tables away kept looking at me. I didn't recognize him. A few minutes into our meal, he was with his wife. He stood up and walked over to my table, looked down at me, and pointed his finger in my face and said, "You're Captain Plum." I looked up and I said, "Yes, sir, I was Captain Plum." He said, "You flew jet fighters in Vietnam. You were on the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. You were shot down. You parachuted into enemy hands and spent 6 years as a prisoner of war in the Hanoi Hilton." I said, "How in the world did you know this?" He replied, "Because I packed your parachute." I was speechless. I staggered to my feet and held out a very grateful hand of thanks. This guy came up with just the proper words. He grabbed my hand, he pumped my arm, and he said, "I guess it worked." "Yes, sir, it did," I said, "and I must tell you, I've said a lot of prayers of thanks for your fingers, but I never thought I'd have the opportunity to express my gratitude in person." He said, "Were all the panels there?" Isn't that just like some technical guy? "Were all the panels there?" "Well, sir," I said, "I must shoot straight with you. Of the 18 panels that were supposed to be in that parachute, I had 15 good ones. 3 were torn, but it wasn't your fault, it was mine. I jumped out of the plane a little too late, and the rate of the speed close to the ground tore 3 of the panels, but it worked." "Let me ask you a question," I said. "Do you keep track of all the parachutes you packed?" "No," he responded. "It's enough gratification for me just to know that I've served." I didn't get much sleep that night, Plume writes. I kept thinking about that man. I kept wondering what he might look like in a Navy uniform. A Dixie cup hat, a bib in his back, bell-bottom trousers. I wondered how many times I might have passed him on board the Kitty Hawk. I wondered how many times I might have seen him and not even said good morning, how are you, or anything, because you see, I was a fighter pilot and he was just a sailor. How many hours did he spend on that long wooden table in the bowels of that ship, weaving the shrouds and folding the silks of those parachutes. I could have cared less until one day my parachute came along and he packed it for me. My question to you is, who's packing your parachute and how are you empowering them to do it? Pause for a minute.